When you hear the lilting sound of a ukulele, your mind may travel instantly to palm trees, ocean waves, and the rhythm of Hawaiian hula. The ukulele has become one of the most recognizable symbols of island life, of relaxation, of joy in simplicity. But to understand its story, to really know where it comes from, we must first leave Hawaii behind and sail halfway across the world to a rugged island in the Atlantic Ocean, more than 8,000 miles away. This is where our story begins, the island of Madeira. It is the mid-19th century. Off the coast of Portugal lies the island of Madeira, a volcanic land of steep cliffs, narrow valleys, and fertile soil. Life here is both beautiful and hard. The people farm grapes, tend to sugarcane, and work the seas. Yet despite the toil, Madeira carries another treasure, a musical soul. In the evenings, villagers gather in taverns, on porches, in the small town squares. Someone produces a cavaquinho, a small, four-stringed instrument, and soon the night fills with music. The cavaquinho, with its bright, jangling sound, is quick to learn, portable, and versatile. It becomes a companion for celebrations, for dances, for working songs that keep spirits alive. The cavaquinho is not alone. Other small stringed instruments thrive in Portugal too, the rajau, the machete, and braguinha, each slightly different in shape, tuning, or tone, but all sharing the same spirit, miniature guitars that pack happiness into a small frame. In Madeira, these instruments are more than entertainment. They are cultural lifelines. They connect families, strengthen communities, and bring music to even the poorest homes. For the Madeirans, music is never far away, and neither is migration. Economic hardship and emigration. The 19th century was not kind to Madeira's people. Wine blight devastated grape crops, poverty spread, and opportunities dried up. Many Madeirans were forced to leave, searching for work and a better future. Their journeys carried them across oceans, to South America, to the United States, and, crucially, to Hawaii. By the 1870s, Hawaii was expanding its sugar industry. Vast plantations required workers, and recruiters looked abroad to bring in labor. Portuguese immigrants, particularly from Madeira and the Azores, were offered contracts to work in Hawaii. For many, it was a bittersweet choice to leave behind home and family, carrying with them little more than hope and their music. On August 23, 1879, a ship named the Ravenscrag sailed into Honolulu Harbor. On board were nearly 500 Madeiran immigrants contracted to work on the sugar plantations. Among them were 3 woodworkers and instrument makers, Manuel Nunes, Augusto Diaz, and José do Espírito Santo. They would soon become central figures in this story. The instruments come to Hawaii. Imagine the scene. Weary passengers disembark, greeted by the heat of the Pacific sun and the sway of palm trees. Amid the confusion of arrival, locals noticed something remarkable. Some of the Madeiran men pull out their small stringed instruments. They play lively folk tunes, their fingers dancing over the strings, and their voices rising above the bustle of the harbor. The Hawaiian onlookers are enchanted. The sound is bright, cheerful, and unlike anything they had heard before. Stories say that one man, so overcome by joy, strummed furiously and leaped about, his fingers moving like a jumping flea. The Hawaiians laughed, and in time they would give this little instrument a name, ukulele, often translated as jumping flea. The moment was small, almost accidental, but it planted a seed. The cavaquinho and rajau had found a new home. From rajau to ukulele. At first, the Hawaiian adaptation wasn't a carbon copy of the Portuguese instruments. The rajau, for instance, had 5 strings and a slightly larger body. The cavaquinho, meanwhile, was tuned differently and played in distinct Portuguese rhythms. But with the hands of Manuel Nunes, Augusto Diaz, and José do Espírito Santo, skilled craftsmen who knew how to build and shape instruments, something new began to form. By blending aspects of the rajau and machete and adjusting the tuning to suit Hawaiian preferences, they created a hybrid instrument that resonated with the islands. This wasn't just a Portuguese cavaquinho anymore. It had a new voice, a new character. It was becoming the ukulele, a sound that spoke to Hawaii. Why did this small instrument take root so deeply in Hawaiian culture? Perhaps it was its size, portable, easy to carry to gatherings on the beach or in the village square. Perhaps it was the sound, soft and sweet enough to accompany singing, but bright enough to carry over a group. But perhaps it was also timing. Hawaii, in the late 19th century, was in the midst of cultural transformation. Western influence was increasing, but Hawaiian traditions remained strong. The ukulele arrived at a moment when music was central to identity, ritual, and community life. The Hawaiians had their own rich musical traditions, with chants, drums, and the slack key guitar, introduced earlier by Spanish and Mexican cowboys. The ukulele fit perfectly into this world. It could accompany hula, support new songs, and blend with older sounds. Within just a few years, the ukulele was no longer foreign. It was Hawaiian. The birth of the ukulele-making tradition. Back in Honolulu, the 3 Madeiran craftsmen began setting up shops. Manuel Nunes, in particular, gained a reputation as a master builder. His instruments were sought after, and his shop became a training ground for a generation of luthiers. Through Nunes and others, the craft of ukulele making spread. Each instrument was hand-built, carefully shaped from koa wood, a Hawaiian hardwood with a rich, warm tone. Koa became synonymous with the ukulele, linking the instrument even more deeply to the islands. Over time, demand grew. By the 1880s, the ukulele was no longer just an immigrant novelty, it was a local treasure, a symbol waiting for its stage. The ukulele's journey had already begun, across the vast Atlantic Ocean, carried in the hands of Portuguese immigrants. By the 1880s, the instrument was firmly planted in Hawaiian soil, reshaped by local craftsmen and played in gatherings across the islands. But how does a small foreign stringed instrument transform into a cultural symbol of an entire people? The answer lies in the highest halls of Hawaiian power, with a king who loved music. King Kalākaua, the Merry Monarch. In 1874, David Kalākaua became king of Hawaii. Unlike rulers who sought distance and formality, Kalākaua was known as the Merry Monarch. He loved art, literature, dance, and most of all, music. His court was alive with sound, guitars, chants, hula performances, and the melodies of his people. But Kalākaua was also a man of vision. He believed music and culture were not just entertainment, but a way to preserve Hawaiian identity. At a time when foreign influence and political pressure were threatening Hawaiian sovereignty, the king saw cultural pride as essential to survival. When the ukulele appeared, fresh from Portuguese immigrant traditions, Kalākaua recognized something special. It was small, charming, and adaptable. And it fit perfectly with his mission, to celebrate Hawaiian life through art. The ukulele at Iolani Palace. Imagine a warm evening at Iolani Palace, lanterns glowing as dignitaries gather in the grand hall. Musicians take their places, and among them, a small koa wood ukulele is strummed. Its voice cuts through the air, cheerful, clear, but also intimate. The sound delights the court royalty. The king himself is enchanted. Soon, the ukulele is a regular presence in palace performances, played alongside hula dancers and singers. It is said that Kalākaua encouraged the use of the ukulele in official celebrations, bringing it into luau's, festivals, and coronation ceremonies. His endorsement gave the instrument prestige. No longer just an immigrant curiosity, the ukulele had the blessing of Hawaiian royalty. A cultural fusion. The late 19th century was a time of blending in Hawaii. Hawaiian music was already evolving, shaped by chants, drums, and the slack-key guitar introduced earlier by Spanish vaqueros. Now the ukulele entered this mix, and something magical happened. Hawaiians embraced the instrument, but made it their own. They developed distinct playing styles, the vamp, a rhythmic strumming pattern that perfectly matched hula, finger-picking melodies, delicate plucked notes that echoed Hawaiian chants, rich vocal accompaniment. The ukulele's bright tone supported singers without overpowering them. This cultural fusion wasn't just musical, it was symbolic. The ukulele represented the Hawaiian ability to take outside influences and transform them into something uniquely their own. Early champions of the ukulele. While King Kalākaua's court gave the ukulele prestige, ordinary Hawaiians gave it life. By the 1890s, the ukulele was spreading beyond palaces and luau's. Farmers, fishermen, and townsfolk carried ukuleles to beaches, porches, and gatherings. Hawaiian musicians began writing songs that featured the ukulele at their core. These songs celebrated everyday life, the beauty of the islands, the rhythm of the waves, the struggles of work, and the joys of love. One early figure was Princess Liliuokalani, Kalākaua's sister, who would later become Hawaii's last monarch. She was a gifted composer and musician, best known for writing Aloha Oi. While she often played the guitar and piano, she supported the ukulele as part of Hawaii's musical identity. Another figure was Samuel Kaili'ili Bright, remembered as one of the first known Hawaiian virtuosos of the ukulele. He demonstrated that the ukulele wasn't just for strumming, it could be played with skill, flair, and creativity. The symbol of Hawaiian identity. As the 19th century came to a close, Hawaii was undergoing political turmoil. In 1893, Queen Liliuokalani was overthrown, and Hawaii would soon be annexed by the United States. Amid this upheaval, the ukulele became more than an instrument. It became a cultural anchor. For Hawaiians, playing the ukulele was an act of joy, but also of resistance. It carried the spirit of their heritage in a time of uncertainty. At luau's, festivals, and family gatherings, the ukulele's sound reminded people of who they were. By the turn of the century, the ukulele was everywhere in Hawaii. Children learned it in schools, street performers strummed it in Honolulu, and luthiers, following in the footsteps of Manuel Nunes and his fellow Portuguese craftsmen, produced instruments in growing numbers. Hawaiians didn't just adopt the ukulele, they redefined it. A tourist attraction. At the same time, Hawaii was becoming a popular destination for American tourists. Steamships brought visitors from San Francisco and beyond. These travelers were eager to experience the exotic sights, tastes, and sounds of the islands. And what instrument greeted them at luau's, hotel performances, and beach gatherings? The ukulele. Visitors were charmed by its cheerful sound and by the idea that such a small, simple instrument could capture the spirit of Hawaii. Many brought ukuleles home as souvenirs. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of ukulele's world journey. The legacy of the Merry Monarch. King Kalākaua passed away in 1891, but his cultural vision endured. The ukulele he had championed would outlive him, carrying Hawaiian identity across generations. Kalākaua is remembered to date not only as a monarch, but as a cultural guardian.
His revival of hula, his encouragement of Hawaiian music, and his embrace of the ukulele cemented him as one of the great figures in the instrument's story. Thanks to him, the ukulele wasn't just another immigrant instrument, it became a symbol. First of Hawaiian joy, then of Hawaiian pride, and ultimately of Hawaiian culture, setting the stage for the world. By the dawn of the 20th century, the ukulele had achieved something remarkable. In just a few decades, it had traveled thousands of miles, transformed from the Kalākaua of Madeira to the beloved sound of Hawaii, and had gained the endorsement of kings and queens. But its story was not confined to the islands. In just a few years, a single event would catapult the ukulele beyond Hawaii, onto the world stage, and into the hearts of millions. That event was the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915 in San Francisco.
The 20th century was just beginning. Hawaii, freshly annexed by the United States in 1898, was entering a new era of identity, tourism, and politics. The ukulele, now woven deeply into Hawaiian life, was waiting for the moment that would carry it far beyond the islands. That moment arrived in 1915 in San Francisco at a World's Fair that would change the history of Hawaiian music forever. The Panama Pacific International Exposition. It was meant to be a celebration of progress. The Panama Pacific International Exposition, held in San Francisco, marked the opening of the Panama Canal and the rebirth of the city after the devastating 1906 earthquake. The fair sprawled across 635 acres, filled with grand pavilions, new inventions, and dazzling displays. But amid all the spectacle, one pavilion stood out for its sound: the Hawaiian Pavilion. Inside, visitors encountered something new and enchanting. Musicians performed in traditional Hawaiian dress, dancers swayed to the hula, and the sweet sound of steel guitars and ukuleles filled the air. Audiences were mesmerized. For many Americans, this was their first exposure to Hawaiian music, and it was unlike anything they had ever heard. The Hawaiian craze. The exposition was more than entertainment. It sparked what became known as the Hawaiian craze. Newspapers raved about the performances. Sheet music publishers began printing Hawaiian-themed songs. Department stores sold postcards, leis, and tropical trinkets. But above all, what people wanted most was the sound they had heard at the fair. And that sound came from the ukulele. Suddenly, the little four-stringed instrument became the talk of the mainland. Its charm was irresistible. It was exotic, yet approachable, joyful, yet soothing. Americans couldn't get enough. Tin Pan Alley and the ukulele boom. By the 1910s and 1920s, America's music industry was centered in New York's Tin Pan Alley, where songwriters and publishers churned out hits for vaudeville and sheet music sales. The ukulele arrived just as this industry was booming. Publishers realized the instrument was perfect for amateur musicians. It was inexpensive, easy to learn, and ideal for accompanying popular songs. Songs like On the Beach at Waikiki and My Little Grass Shack became national hits. Sheet music often included ukulele chord diagrams, encouraging people to strum along at home. And it worked. By the 1920s, millions of Americans, from college students to families in living rooms, were playing the ukulele. College campuses and youth culture. The ukulele became especially popular among young people. College students in the 1920s embraced it as a part of the jazz age spirit, carefree, fun, and slightly rebellious. Small, affordable ukuleles were sold by the tens of thousands in department stores and through catalogs like Sears, Roebuck & Company. For just a few dollars, anyone could own an instrument. Students played them on parties, on road trips, and in dormitories. For young women in particular, the ukulele was liberating. Unlike larger instruments, it was easy to carry and socially acceptable to play in mixed company. Photographs from the era show groups of college students strumming ukuleles together, singing popular songs of late into the night. The instrument wasn't just a musical fad, it was part of youth culture. The rise of the manufacturers.
As demand exploded, American manufacturers rushed to supply ukuleles. One of the most famous was the C.F. Martin Company, better known for its guitars. Martin began producing ukuleles in 1916 and quickly set the standard for quality. Their instruments, often made from Hawaiian koa wood, became prized possessions. Other companies such as Gibson and Harmony joined the fray. Factories produced ukuleles in vast numbers, ranging from finely crafted instruments to cheap beginner models. By the 1920s, the ukulele industry was thriving. Vaudeville and radio. The ukulele's popularity wasn't confined to homes and campuses. It also became a star on stage. Vaudeville performers incorporated ukulele songs into their acts, charming audiences with its cheerful sound. The instrument's portability made it perfect for traveling entertainers. With the rise of radio in the 1920s, the ukulele reached even more listeners. Hawaiian music programs aired across the country, often featuring the instrument. Its bright tone translated well over early radio equipment, making it a favorite for broadcasters. The Jazz Age Blend. The ukulele wasn't just for Hawaiian songs. It became part of America's musical melting pot. Musicians blended it with jazz, blues, and ragtime. Strumming patterns evolved to match the syncopated rhythms of the era. In speakeasies and dance halls, the ukulele added a playful voice to the soundtrack of the Roaring Twenties. It was small, but it held its own alongside banjos, pianos, and horns. George Formby and the ukulele banjo. The craze wasn't limited to America. In Britain, the ukulele found an unlikely champion. George Formby, a comedian and singer who rose to fame in the 1930s. Formby often played a hybrid instrument, the ukulele banjo, which combined the tuning of a uke with the body of a banjo. His cheeky songs and rapid strumming style made him a sensation. Formby's influence cemented the ukulele as a beloved instrument in the UK, a parallel boom to the one happening in America. A cultural phenomenon. By the late 1920s, the ukulele was everywhere. It appeared in advertisements, movies, and cartoons. Manufacturers couldn't keep up with demand. In some ways, it was more than an instrument. It was a symbol of optimism. At a time when the United States was experiencing prosperity and cultural change, the ukulele represented lighthearted fun. But like many booms, this one would not last forever. The crash and decline. The Great Depression of the 1930s hit hard. With money tight, fewer people could afford to buy instruments, and sales of ukuleles plummeted. The carefree image of the ukulele, tied to the Roaring Twenties, felt out of place during an era of hardship. While the instrument never disappeared, it remained beloved in Hawaii and among loyal fans. Its golden age in America had passed. The ukulele had crossed into the mainland, conquered popular culture, and left its mark. But it would take new voices, new media, and new cultural shifts to bring it back into the spotlight. Setting the stage for revival. Though its first wave of American popularity waned, the ukulele's journey was far from over. The instrument would resurface in the 1950s and 1960s with surprising force, carried by television, mass production, and even a few unlikely pop stars. But before that revival, it first endured years of being seen as quaint, even old-fashioned. The ukulele had survived transatlantic journeys, royal courts, world's fairs, and vaudeville stages. It would survive the Great Depression, too. And in time, it would rise again.
The ukulele had already conquered Hawaii, dazzled San Francisco's World's Fair, and charmed America's Jazz Age. By the end of the 1920s, it was in dorm rooms, vaudeville theaters, and living rooms across the country. But history has a way of shifting the tune. The carefree optimism of the Roaring Twenties gave way to the economic collapse of the 1930s. The ukulele, once the sound of youth and prosperity, suddenly felt out of place. Yet, like the tides of the Pacific from which it first rose,
the ukulele's fortunes would rise and fall again. The decline of the 1930s. When the Great Depression struck, American families cut back on luxuries. Sales of ukuleles, once measured in the millions, plummeted. Music publishers printed fewer Hawaiian-themed hits, and the bright strumming that had once filled college campuses quieted. On radio, the ukulele lingered, but it was no longer the star. Big band swing dominated the airwaves, with brass, drums, and crooners leading the way. Compared to the booming sound of orchestras, the ukulele felt small, even quaint. Still, it survived. Loyal players, especially in Hawaii and among a niche group of enthusiasts on the mainland, kept the instrument alive. But the ukulele's next big moment wouldn't come until after World War II. With the rise of television and a new wave of American consumerism. The post-war ukulele boom. The 1950s brought prosperity, optimism, and the baby boom. Families moved to the suburbs, televisions became household staples, and new technologies made mass production cheaper than ever. Into this world stepped Mario Macaferri, an Italian-born plastic manufacturer and musician. Macaferri believed the ukulele could be reinvented for the modern age. Instead of handcrafted koa wood, his instruments were made of plastic, inexpensive, durable, and easy to mass produce. He struck a deal with Arthur Godfrey, one of America's most popular television personalities. Godfrey, a singer and ukulele player, promoted Macaferri's plastic ukes on his shows, demonstrating how easy they were to play. He even gave lessons to his massive television audience. The result? A nationwide craze. Macaferri sold millions of plastic ukuleles through department stores and mail-order catalogs. For as little as $5, anyone could own one. Children received them as gifts. Teenagers strummed them at parties. The ukulele had returned, this time not as a Hawaiian novelty, but as a piece of post-war American culture. Arthur Godfrey, the ukulele's TV champion. Arthur Godfrey wasn't just a promoter. He was the face of the ukulele in the 1950s. With his warm voice, affable personality, and genuine love of the instrument, he made the ukulele feel approachable. On television, he strummed simple chords, encouraging viewers to follow along. His show has often featured sing-alongs, turning the uke into a communal experience. For many Americans, Godfrey was their first ukulele teacher. His influence created an entire generation of casual players. And while some dismissed the instrument as a toy, others began to see its musical potential again. Pop culture and the ukulele. The 1950s and 60s also brought the ukulele into Hollywood films and popular music. In Elvis Presley's Blue Hawaii, 1961, the instrument appeared alongside lush island scenery, cementing its association with romance and paradise. Hawaiian performers like Eddie Kamai and the Sons of Hawaii kept traditional playing alive, blending the ukulele into modern Hawaiian music. Meanwhile, the instrument continued to spread in schools. Cheap models meant music teachers could hand out entire class sets. For many American children in the 1950s and 60s, the ukulele was their very first instrument. It was a time of lighthearted strumming, backyard sing-alongs, and an easy entry into music. But once again, the ukulele's boom would not last. Tiny Tim and the Changing Image. In the late 1960s, a peculiar figure entered the spotlight. Tiny Tim. With his high falsetto voice, long hair, and eccentric mannerisms, Tiny Tim became a novelty act on shows like The Tonight Show. His signature song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, featured him strumming a ukulele with an odd mix of sincerity and parody. Audiences were fascinated and divided. Some found him charming, others ridiculous. Unfortunately for the ukulele, Tiny Tim's image cemented a stereotype. To many, the instrument was no longer associated with Hawaiian beauty, jazz-age charm, or post-war sing-alongs. Instead, it became linked to quirkiness, kitsch, even comedy. By the 1970s, the ukulele had fallen out of fashion once again. Guitars dominated rock, folk, and pop music. The ukulele was left behind, often dismissed as a toy or a punchline. The quiet years. For the next few decades, the ukulele's presence dimmed on the global stage. Sales dwindled. Music stores stocked few models. In America and Europe, the instrument was often forgotten. But in Hawaii, it never disappeared. There, the ukulele remained central to local music. Generations of Hawaiian musicians continued to innovate, keeping traditions live while exploring new sounds. Artists like Eddie Kamai pushed the instrument's boundaries, proving it could be virtuosic. Hawaiian schools and families passed it down, ensuring it was never truly lost. This quiet preservation in Hawaii would eventually fuel its next great revival. Seeds of renewal. By the late 20th and early 21st century, something began to stir. Independent musicians around the world rediscovered the ukulele's charm. Its portability, simplicity, and affordability once again made it appealing. In Japan, the ukulele gained a cult following, thanks to Hawaiian tourism and popular Japanese players like Yukihiko Haida. In Canada and Europe, folk musicians began incorporating it into their repertoires. And in Hawaii, virtuosos like Israel Kamakawiwo'ole, or Iz, reintroduced the world to the emotional depth the ukulele could carry. His medley of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, What a Wonderful World, would in the 1990s bring the ukulele's voice back to global attention. But that is the story of the next act. Rise, fall, and hope. By the end of the 20th century, the ukulele had lived many lives. The immigrant's gift, the royal court's treasure, the jazz age craze, the post-war family instrument, the television sing-along star, the novelty act, and the Hawaiian tradition bearer. It had risen and fallen, been celebrated and mocked, yet it endured, surviving cultural shifts, economic crashes, and changing tastes. The ukulele was never truly gone. It was only waiting for the right moment to rise again.
For more than a century, the ukulele had sailed across oceans, found its place in royal courts, fueled American fads, and endured decades of ridicule. By the 1980s, it was easy to dismiss the ukulele as a relic, a quirky toy, a forgotten novelty. And yet, beneath the surface, the instrument never disappeared. In Hawaii, in Japan, in small communities of loyal players, the ukulele sound persisted. And in the 1990s, a voice emerged that would remind the world of its beauty. A voice so tender, so powerful, that the ukulele would once again be heard everywhere. Israel Kamakawiwo'ole, IZ. In 1993, Hawaiian musician Israel Kamakawiwo'ole recorded a medley of Somewhere Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World. Just his voice and his ukulele, nothing more. The recording was intimate, fragile, and deeply human. Izzy's voice floated like a dream, and his strumming carried both joy and sorrow. Though he passed away only 4 years later, his song traveled far. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, it appeared in films, television shows, and commercials.
For many people around the world, it was the first time they had truly heard the ukulele. Not as a joke, not as a novelty, but as an instrument of emotional depth. Izzy's medley became a global anthem, selling millions of copies and streaming billions of times. And with it, the ukulele's renaissance began. The Internet era. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw the rise of the Internet, and with it, a new kind of musical community. Ukulele players who once practiced in isolation could now share tips, songs, and performances online. Websites with free chord charts spread across forums. Beginners discovered that with just a few handful of chords, they could play hundreds of songs. YouTube, launched in 2005, became a turning point. Suddenly, anyone with a webcam could post a performance. Ukulele covers flooded the site, from heartfelt renditions of pop songs to tutorials for beginners. The ukulele was no longer limited by geography or stereotypes. It was global, accessible, and viral. The indie folk movement. As the 2000s progressed, the ukulele found a new role in modern music. Indie folk artists embraced it for its warmth, portability, and charm. Bands like Beirut and Noah and the Whale used the ukulele to craft nostalgic, whimsical sounds. Singer-songwriters incorporated it into acoustic sets, creating an intimate connection with audiences. In 2006, British musician Kate Nash strummed her way to stardom with ukulele-backed songs. In 2008, the American band Train included it in their pop-rock hits. The ukulele was no longer just Hawaiian, no longer just novelty. It was cool again, woven into the fabric of modern pop and folk music. Viral ukulele moments. Throughout the 2010s and 2020s, the ukulele's resurgence accelerated through viral performances. In 2006, YouTube viewers were stunned by Jake Shimabukuro, a virtuoso from Hawaii, whose ukulele rendition of George Harrison's While My Guitar Gently Weeps showcased astonishing technical skill. Millions watched as Jake transformed the instrument, proving it could rival guitars, pianos, even orchestras. In 2011, singer-songwriter Julian Nuns became a YouTube star with her ukulele covers, inspiring a new generation of players. Then came Grace Vanderwald, a 12-year-old girl who won America's Got Talent in 2016 with her original songs and ukulele. Her performance reached millions, and suddenly children everywhere wanted to pick up the little four-string instrument. And in 2017, Vance Choi's Riptide, with its instantly recognizable ukulele riff, became a global hit, further cementing the instrument in modern pop. The ukulele wasn't just back, it was everywhere. Schools and community. Part of the ukulele's success in the modern era lies in its accessibility. Music educators around the world embraced it as the perfect classroom instrument. Unlike violins or brass instruments, ukuleles are inexpensive, durable, and quick to learn. In just one lesson, students can strum their very first song. Across the US, Canada, the UK, and beyond, ukulele programs blossomed. Entire classrooms played together, creating joyful sounds that inspired lifelong love of music. At the same time, community groups and festivals grew. From Vancouver to Tokyo, from London to Sydney, ukulele clubs brought people together. Festivals like the Ukulele Festival Hawaii, founded in 1971, expanded in size and influence, drawing players from across the globe. The ukulele had transformed into not just an instrument, but a social force, a way to connect, to share, to belong. Ukulele craftsmanship reborn. While cheap, mass-market ukuleles fueled its popularity, the Renaissance also brought a renewed interest in craftsmanship. Luthiers in Hawaii continued to build fine, koa wood instruments, carrying on traditions from Manuel Nunes and the early Portuguese craftsmen. Companies like Kamaka Ukulele, founded in 1916, thrived once again, celebrated for their artistry. At the same time, boutique builders worldwide experimented with new woods, designs, and techniques, from custom tenors with intricate inlays to experimental electric ukuleles. The instrument proved its versatility. The ukulele was no longer bound to one identity. It could be humble or luxurious, simple or complex, traditional or experimental. Ukulele in the digital age. By the 2010s and 2020s, the ukulele had become a star of social media. TikTok videos featured catchy ukulele-backed songs. Instagram and YouTube tutorials reached millions of beginners. Apps allowed players to tune, learn chords, and even play virtual ukuleles on their phones. Online communities created challenges, collaborations, and songbooks. The instrument's accessibility, combined with the power of digital platforms, turned the ukulele into one of the most played instruments of the modern era. A global instrument. From its humble roots in Madeira to Hawaii to America, the ukulele had now become global. In Japan, it was a beloved instrument, linked to both Hawaiian culture and homegrown traditions. In the UK, Georgia Formby's legacy gave way to modern festivals and a new generation of players. In Brazil, Canada, Australia, and across Europe, the ukulele became a staple of classrooms, living rooms, and concert halls. No longer tied to a single culture or stereotype, it had become a universal language of joy. A new identity. By the 2020s, the ukulele had taken on a new identity, an instrument of inclusivity. It was approachable for beginners, expressive for professionals, and adaptable across genres. It could carry the weight of Izzy's haunting ballads, the technical fireworks of Jake Shimabukuro, or the playful sing-alongs of a classroom. It could belong to folk singers, pop stars, indie bands, or simply a child strumming for the first time. The ukulele had transcended its past booms and busts. It was no longer just a fad. It was part of the world's musical fabric. Looking ahead. As the 21st century moved forward, the ukulele stood stronger than ever. Its history, filled with journeys, reinventions, and resurrections, had shaped it into something resilient. It had begun as a modern folk instrument, been reborn in Hawaii, conquered America, survived mockery, and risen again as a global voice. And yet the story wasn't finished. The ukulele was not just surviving, it was thriving. But what would its legacy be? What role would it play in the decades to come?
From its humble beginnings in Madeira, across the oceans to Hawaii, through the roaring 20s and the quiet years of obscurity, the ukulele has lived many lives. It has been adored, mocked, forgotten, and rediscovered. But here in the 21st century, it stands tall once again. Not as a novelty, not as a fad, but as a global instrument, a bridge between cultures, a tool for education, and a voice of joy. The ukulele around the world. Today, the ukulele is everywhere. In Hawaii, it remains a cultural treasure, celebrated each year at the Ukulele Festival Hawaii, founded by Roy Sukuma in 1971. Thousands gather to hear hundreds of players, from children strumming their first chords to world-class virtuosos, all united by the same sound. In Japan, the ukulele is beloved not only as a musical instrument, but as a lifestyle symbol. Festivals, schools, and clubs flourish, carrying forward a tradition that began with Hawaiian tourism in the 20th century. In the United Kingdom, festivals in places like Cheltenham and Liverpool attract international players. George Formby fan clubs celebrate the legacy of the ukulele banjo, while modern performers push the instrument into new genres. Across North America, community ukulele clubs meet in cafes, libraries, and senior centers. From Vancouver to New York, amateur players gather not for competition, but for camaraderie, singing folk songs and pop covers together. And in Australia, South America, Africa, and beyond, the ukulele continues to spread, embraced for its affordability and joy. What began as a Madeiran machete has truly become a citizen of the world. The modern masters. The ukulele of today is not just about strumming 3 chords around a campfire. Modern masters have redefined what is possible on 4 strings.
Jake Shimabukuro continues to astonish audiences with his virtuosity, treating the ukulele like a classical or jazz instrument capable of complexity and power. James Hill from Canada has pushed boundaries with jazz, blues, and experimental playing, showing the ukulele's versatility. Taimiana Gardner from Hawaii blends flamenco, rock, and classical influences, electrifying audiences with her performances. Herb Ota, or Ota-san, and Kale Gamio add to the legacy with styles ranging from traditional Hawaiian to contemporary fusion. These artists have proven that the ukulele can be serious, complex, and endlessly expressive without losing its warmth and charm. The classroom instrument. One of the ukulele's most enduring roles is in education. Across the world, schools have adopted it as the ideal first instrument. Why? Because it is approachable. Children can hold it easily, strum it without pain, and make music quickly. Unlike the violin or trumpet, where months of practice may be needed before a pleasing sound emerges, the ukulele gives instant gratification. With just a few chords, C, G, F, and AM, students can play hundreds of songs. This accessibility builds confidence, encouraging children to explore more music. For many, the ukulele becomes the first step on a lifelong musical journey. In this way, the ukulele is not only shaping individual lives, but nurturing future generations of musicians. The digital generation. Social media has given the ukulele a new kind of fame. Platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are filled with ukulele performances. Beginners share their first songs, professionals showcase advanced techniques, and influencers use it to connect with audiences. The ukulele's compact size makes it perfect for the digital age. It fits in the frame of a smartphone camera. It records cleanly with minimal equipment, and its bright tone cuts through even low-quality audio. Viral trends often feature the ukulele. Covers of pop hits, original songs, and comedic skits all thrive with its presence. The instrument has become a cultural shorthand for playfulness, sincerity, and creativity. Ukulele as a symbol. Beyond music, the ukulele has become a symbol. For Hawaii, it remains a marker of cultural pride, a reminder of resilience, identity, and joy in the face of colonization and change. For educators, it is a symbol of access and inclusivity. For global communities, it represents connection, a way to bring people together regardless of language or background. And for millions of casual players, it symbolizes something deeply personal: happiness. Few instruments carry such an immediate sense of joy. Pick up a ukulele, strum a chord, and smiles appear. That has been true for more than a century, and it remains true today. The ukulele's legacy. So what is the legacy of this little four-stringed instrument? It is the story of transformation, of how an immigrant's cavaquinho became a Hawaiian treasure, a global phenomenon, a TV star, a punchline, and then a beloved voice of the world. It is the story of resilience. The ukulele has survived booms and busts, ridicule and neglect, yet always returned stronger than before. It is the story of community, from Hawaiian luaus to British vaudeville, from American campuses to global festivals. The ukulele has always been about bringing people together. And it is the story of joy, above all, joy. The future of the ukulele. What lies ahead? The ukulele is poised to continue its global journey. Technology will push it further with electric models, experimental tunings, and digital learning platforms. Musicians will keep reinventing it, bending genres and styles in ways we can't yet imagine. But even as it evolves, the ukulele will remain true to itself. Small, simple, accessible, and joyful. Perhaps that is why it has survived for so long, because no matter the century, no matter the culture, people always need joy. And joy is exactly what the ukulele provides. Closing narration. Gentle ukulele strumming returns, joined by ocean wave sounds, soft and warm. The ukulele story is one of oceans crossed, cultures shared, and generations united. From the docks of Madeira to the royal courts of Hawaii, from the bustling streets of San Francisco to campuses, festivals, and digital screens around the globe, it has carried laughter, longing, and love. It has weathered fads and ridicule, yet always returned, singing its simple song of happiness. In the end, the ukulele is more than wood, strings, or sound. It is a reminder that music can be small and still powerful, humble and still profound, and playful and still deeply moving. A reminder that sometimes the smallest instruments carry the biggest stories. And so the ukulele plays on, across the sea, across the world, and into the hearts of all who listen.